cooking demo. We are hosting this, the Organic Association of Kentucky. We are a nonprofit promoting organic farming in the state. And our mission is to advance organic agriculture. We do this by focusing on growing ecological, economic, and socially just futures for Kentucky farmers. We heavily focus on organic farming for several reasons. So if you're curious about why organic, we focus on organic farming and promoting, encouraging and supporting farmers to certify in the state because organic farming practices improve soil health and sequester more carbon. They build topsoil. They minimize exposure to lots of different agriculture chemicals. They increase biodiversity. And they help with water absorption and retention of the soil. And they're always non-GMO. So lots of different reasons. And we also do organic farming promotion through several different program areas. So we focus on Oak as a nonprofit has an annual farming conference. We host farmer field days. We offer transition trainer support for working with farmers one-on-one. We offer consumer outreach opportunities, as well as Kentucky Farm Share Coalition is our workplace wellness program where we work with a coalition of certified organic farms to bring in weekly organic produce to workplaces, and those employers pay for a certain portion of the CSA share as a health benefit. So this is a really unique, cool program and is kind of the reason we're hosting this cooking demo today. So if you have a community supported agriculture share, you're a part of the Kentucky Farm Share Coalition program or participating in a different CSA, you have a garden, you're purchasing local food at the farmer's market, we want this event today to be a helpful way to learn more ways about how you can prep and use seasonal produce. We're focusing today on fritters, but if you have other questions about storing or prepping vegetables, drop any of those into the chat. After each recipe that Chef Tanya demos, we're gonna have a little time for Q&A. So we'll definitely get to your questions. And we're just excited to have you all. So thanks so much for tuning in. And I'm going to pass it off to Chef Tanya now, and she's going to dazzle us with all of her recipes.
Okay. Hello and welcome. And when Katie suggested this to me, I really jumped on it because fritters are a great way to use up all kinds of different veg all throughout the growing season. We love to feature those kinds of recipes here so that not only can you use it for this box that's coming up this week, or that you might get today, this evening when you pick up, but that you can use these throughout the growing season. And that's why Katie's going to send out the bulk of the recipes that I'm using today. And that's why I've included a fritter for every veg. So I just kind of call that the every veg fritter. So that you can, and it has different little hints and tips and tricks for how to incorporate all different kinds of produce as you're getting it throughout your share. So that's one kind of fritter. Just briefly to go over fritters, I think most of us are pretty familiar with them, but it's those little fried pieces of dough that contain other things. Today we're going to do a root vegetable fritter first. And we're going to do one with zucchini and summer squash because we're starting to get those. And I know there's a lot of people who always go, what do I do with all of this? Well, I'm going to show you a recipe that will really use up quite a bit of it. So that might help you as you're getting this overload of zucchini and summer squash right now. And then we'll show you a few other things and some sauces to pair with those. So just to go over fritters, in general, it comes from a late Latin word that means to fry. So basically its name is how you prepare it. And we are going to fry, there are actually 3 different ways that you can fry. So if you are fry avoidant, as I typically am, I think there are some things to ease your conscience about that. So you do have a deep fry method, and that's usually your scoop and dump into deep hot fat. And that's what, that's going to give you the bubbly kind of hush puppy like fritter. Then you can do a shallow fry, which is in a saute pan with about 1/3 of an inch of oil. And so it comes up on the side just a little bit. So that's going to give you more of a patty kind of fritter. Or like if you've done veggie burgers, that's pretty similar to that. And then we have the flat cook on a griddle, almost like a pancake fritter. And we've got some of those to show you today as well. So there are all different kinds of fritters. We're going to do a couple different kinds as a demo and then show you a few more. And when you're getting ready to do this, the one thing you're going to have to control more than anything is the moisture on those. So I'm going to show you a few things to do in regard to that and some things that we've already prepared in regard to that. But let me get started on the vegetable fritters today. I've got a couple of sweet potatoes here. I have to remember that my camera's on this side. Sweet potatoes here, a couple of carrots. These are just chunked up so that they'll fit into my food processor hopper. And then I've got some golden beets, lovely golden beets. You could use red beets. You could use any kind of root veg in this, regular white potatoes. You could use parsnips when they start coming in, rutabaga, turnips. So if you're not a huge fan of those kinds of things, this might be a good way to try new root veg if you're not used to it. I've got a couple of onions right here, and with all of this, I'm just going to process that in my food processor. Now, if you don't have a food processor, or if you don't have one with a grater blade on it, I do have my grater blade in, then what you could do is grate it just on a box grater on the side. It will take you a little longer. It's a little bit rougher with a hard veg like this. So if you'll excuse the noise for a moment, I'm going to get this on. And I'm just pouring each one of these in and processing it through. Actually, I'll probably use handfuls of these. You don't even really need them this small. You just need them small enough to fit through your hopper. And I'm gonna stop with the sweet potatoes right there, go on to the carrots, which hopefully we can do in one go. On to the beets. I already see some moisture on my beets. And a little bit of the onion. Now there is a lot of water in onion. Now we can stop that noise. So because of all the water that's in this, there's one step I'm going to do, and that is I'm going to squeeze this out. So I've got a little cheesecloth here. If you don't have cheesecloth, you can use a clean tea towel or dish towel to do this, or just use your hands. If sometimes they're the best tools that you have. Let me get this off here. And I'm just going to pour all my grated veg into this cheesecloth. That way I can get rid of the food processor here. Now we're going to pull this up. Maybe give it a little salt to help all of these veggies give off their water. And we're going to pull the 4/4 in, and you can do this with a dishcloth, or if you're doing it by hand, I would just do it in small handfuls. Put it together and give it a good squeeze. I don't know if you can, yeah, in the cutting board camera, you can see how much I'm getting out of this just immediately. These are very watery vegetables, and we don't want that diluting our dough. So we're going to give that a squeeze. Now, the other method that we've used on the zucchini is to grate it a day ahead and salt it. And I just grated that on the box grater. And you just salt that and let it sit in a colander or a strainer in a bowl in the fridge overnight. And that will get a lot of the water off of it too. If you are doing any kind of leafy green for your fritter, you'll want to use this method, especially if you blanch and shock it. So I'm going to get rid of that in my discard bowl, and we're going to hang on to that because I'm going to squeeze the water out of the zucchini as well. Now, in addition to that, we have some flour, baking powder, and salt, 1 egg, got a little oil for cooking in, and then we'll talk about sauces in just a moment. I've got my iron skillet. You'll see that in just a moment. I've got it on about medium heat. Actually, it might be a little bit higher. It's starting to smoke. So I love an iron skillet for fritters because it's seasoned, so you don't have to use as much oil. And it just heats so evenly, so you don't get hot spots. You don't get burnt fritters and then underdone fritters. So I'm going to mix my dry ingredients. Salt. And now you'll notice this isn't a lot of batter or dough. And that's because I like the recipes where you just have enough to keep everything bound together. So I'm going to stir that together, the flour. And you'll notice that most of these batters or doughs, pretty much flour, egg, maybe some kind of leavener, not always. So it's not a lot of dough. I'm kind of making this separately to show you. So we've got all that incorporated. Do a little bit more salt on the veggies because these are sweet veg. I'm gonna just kind of go by eye. It says like, I think 1 to 2 pounds of the veggies, but I really just kind of go by feel and how I like this. Again, I like just enough dough to hold everything together. And now if we have red beets or some even watermelon radish, you can cook radish. I need a little bit more of my veg. Again, I like it to just barely hold together. Now, if you're doing this and there's still too much water in your veg, it will spatter when it hits the oil. So you just need to throw in a little bit. Always have a little extra flour. I do here. And so if your batter is spattering a lot when it hits the oil, just throw a little bit of extra flour in your batter, stir that in. Now I'm just talking about like a tablespoon or 2. If you put much more than that, you will need to re-season. And then one thing we want to do when we start out, and I'm going to mix both batters first so I can turn you around to the pans and then turn you back. One thing about this is you can mix these up earlier in the day or a day ahead, but again, the veggies might give off water. So you might want to add a little flour then. How do you know? We'll do a little test. So if you've ever done meatballs or a meatloaf and you want to see how well it's seasoned, we can do the same thing with a fritter. So we'll do a test fritter, see how it's seasoned, see if it holds together and doesn't spatter. Okay, so that's our root veg, and we'll get that ready and set it over here. And we're going to move on to the zucchini real quick, and then we'll fry everything at one time. So for the zucchini, like I said, here's our zucchini and summer squash, all grated up. It's been draining in a colander overnight, but I don't know if you can tell, there's a little bit of water still right there. So again, we're gonna take our cheesecloth or a clean tea towel, or just like if you were just doing your hands, I would just take enough that would fit really well and squeeze, just like you're wringing out a rag. So maybe I'll just show you this way. I'm going to be careful about the amount. But what's nice about this, as you can see, you can start out with several really large zucchini, and by the time you drain them and you squeeze them out, there's not a lot left. It comes down to a really small amount. So here it is squeezed. Now the batter is very similar for this one. So I've got a little flour. This is just a little salt, no leavener in this, so I'll combine that right there. A little bit of Parmesan cheese. So you do want to be careful about your salt in this because that will add some saltiness as well. An egg here, and of course a little oil for frying. Now I'm gonna mince up 1 clove of garlic, and I like to do that. I like to pop that paper off with the side of my knife, and then we'll just. But I'm gonna get this little. If you have green sprouts in your garlic, it just means it's been around for a little while, and that's fine. You can just take that sprout out. start chopping it up. Get rid of that little woody part at the end, and then you get to do that move that everybody loves. Put your hand on the back and just lift and lower your knife until everything's about 1/8 or smaller and about the same size. We'll go through that so we get it all together. Throw that in with our veg. A sprinkle of salt on that. You see me, I'm adding seasoning in every layer. And then I'm gonna mix my wet ingredients with my dry. A couple of these, for example, the drop in the deep fat kind of fritter, fat and fritter together, have a little bit of milk in them too to form more of a batter than a dough. But let's mix up our dough. So you can see the amount here is not a whole lot, but it's going to use up a lot of the veg. We're going to make sure to get all of that in there. And then mix this together. And again, you're just looking for enough dough to hold your veggies together. Drop doughs like those, like an okra fritter that I'm going to show you, they have a little bit more dough to them to veg ratio. Anybody do a lot of fritters, or do you have a favorite fritter? I mentioned okra, or if you've grown up on corn fritters. This is a great way too to add a little side veg to just about any meal. If you're trying to get kids to try a few more vegetables that appear in your CSA box, this is a great way, because who doesn't love something that's breaded and fried? You can even call the sort of flat fritters savory pancakes, unless that would turn someone off. So this is our dough here, and I'm going to turn you around, spin you around over to our frying pans. I've got some, this is the important step to have done ahead. I've got some sheet pans. They're lined with paper towels for draining everything. So I'm going to have those right next to the frying area. I'm going to use a pretty high heat oil. So I've got some canola oil here. It won't have a high smoke point, because you're going to have these on medium to high heat. You fry around 350 to 375 degrees. Remembering that when you put items into hot fat, it will bring the temperature down. So you want it to start frying right away when you put it in. That's why I've been preheating my pans over here the whole time I've been talking. I've got these scoops. This does help portion everything out. It makes everything look the same size. But you can take a couple of tablespoons and just take, or a couple of just regular silverware spoons, and that will help you keep everything the same size. It'll cook at the same rate, and then you get perfect fritters every time. If your fritters burn as soon as you put them in, your oil is too hot, just pull that out, turn the heat down, and wait a few minutes. And we'll do our little tester first. So I'm going to move out of this camera range and over here. I'm going to pour in about 1/3 of an inch deep of oil. Be very careful about this part. So I do have a bit of heat going on in this pan. I'm going to start with the root veg. You just drop it in and sort of press it out if you want the flat fritters. We'll do a couple of those to start, and then we'll do one of the zucchini to see if it's going to stick together. You can test the heat of your pans this way. Looks like I might have it a little hot. So what I would do here, since these are getting really brown really quick, since this pan is so hot, I'll probably just pull it out of the pan when the outside is done and pop it in a warm oven, and that way the inside will be sure to finish. But we can also We can see that they're sticking together. We don't need any more flour. And then I'll pull this off and we'll taste test it, make sure we have our seasoning right. So we'll let those cool just a moment. I'm gonna add a little bit more flour to our zucchini. It's already looking a little wet, getting rid of even a little bit more water. Such a watery veg. So just adding a little flour to that. And then let's take a taste. Root veg is perfect. Zucchini needs just a smidge more salt and some pepper. So that's the safest way to test and make sure you have everything seasoned. All right, I'm gonna fry up a few more of these and show you hopefully a better way to get this done. Just don't crowd your pan. Give yourself room, more than anything, you want to give yourself room to safely flip everything over. I may do like 5 or 6. We'll do some zucchini. Actually, I will go ahead and do 6 in the middle of the root veg. Just kind of press it down with whatever you're putting in there. Get close to the pan. You see now you need that drain pan at the end. You put a few more zucchini down. Kind of an awkward angle, I hope. All right. And more. All right. So for flipping, it's pretty easy. Once you flip, you gotta let them sit and cook for a bit. Don't fuss over them. Don't try to move them around too early. They do need to get that crust on them. And then you just take a light metal spat and just take a corner and gently flip it over. You can also use the edge of the saute pan or the iron skillet. You do have to give it a moment for the crust to form. I see it when you flip that too early, then everything starts breaking up. There we go. There's some crust. All right, and all you're wanting to do is get these up to about 160, 165 in the middle, enough for the egg to get done. Everything is grated into really small pieces, so that shouldn't affect any of the cooking time on this. Even though it's root veg, it's grated up, so it's pretty small. It'll still get really tender, even just in a few minutes, especially if the oil is good and hot. So we're gonna let these sit for another minute or two, and then we'll transfer them over to our drain pan. And these 4 fritters, you typically want to do them kind of right before you're serving. We did do some from yesterday. We're reheating them right now, but you just don't get the same kind of crispiness. So it works. It's just, it's going to be a little bit more tender than crispy. Now, if your oil gets low, just make sure to add a little bit more. You may want to do that in between batches so that your oil comes up to temperature appropriately. I'm going to give these plenty of time to drain. one more little chance on that side, and we'll flip this over. Now, while I'm letting those zucchini finish, I do want to show you, we're going to start talking about sauces. So fritters are great for using up veg, but you can also use quite a bit more veg alongside them, or some if you take dairy, some dairy products. And then also you can make relishes, you can use pickles, you can use sprouts and herbs as garnishes. These could be a bed for something, so you can put a couple fritters on the plate, maybe some other sauteed veg and egg on top, and you have a wonderful breakfast. Or you could do those breakfast pancakes and put marinara on top of the zucchini for savory breakfast pancakes. Another thing I want to show you to do, though, very simple little tomato relish here. It's beautiful. Got just a tiny bowl. I'm going to throw everything into the bowl as I do it. But I have these little grape tomatoes here. And I'm just going to half them. And this you can throw together in just a few minutes. Again, this is something that works well if you can do it fresh rather than, although, I mean, it can sit overnight. It just will change the texture of the tomatoes slightly. They won't be as fresh and juicy. A lot of that will, but then a lot of the flavors will meld together. So it's up to you. I'm going to slice a few more of these. Different colors, you could just chop up heirloom tomatoes that you find in your box or at the farmer's market. If they're really tiny, maybe you can throw them in whole. And then I've got a wee bit of a shallot. I'm just going to take a little bit of this and mince it. This is a garnish we used to use once tomatoes started coming in at Holly Hill Inn. We almost made this garnish every week, depending on the menu. Was this because we had 17 sometimes different varieties of tomatoes at the Holly Hill Inn garden. So I'm just gonna do a little mince on half of this shallot. It's a huge one, I don't need all of it. You could use a little garlic or a little red onion, or you could leave alliums out altogether if you wanted to. I like a little bit of shallot. It's a mild allium flavor, sweet, but it also has a little depth. Just throw in a little bit of that. I have some fresh parsley here. You could use fresh thyme. I've got a couple of leaves of basil. If you're trying to use up herbs, I'm trying to also show you ways to use up everything in your box. So just mince this up or cut it into ribbons. Let me get these fritters out. If you're making big batches of these, what you probably do want to do is have your pans going, but have your oven on about 200, 225 degrees. And then that way you can throw sheet pans of fritters in the oven as you cook them, and they can finish up. That way you can brown on the outside and let them finish in the oven. I'm going to cut up a little of this basil. It's looking a little sad, but we'll go with it. You could also use some pesto in this. Just dump in a little pesto, and it would save you a lot of time. And then I have just a wee bit of red wine vinegar. You could use any kind you want. A little bit of really good olive oil, some salt and pepper. And that's a beautiful little relish that you can use on any of these fritters, really. But I think with the zucchini, it would work really nice. All right, so let's look at all the different kinds we can do and the different sauces we can pair with. So I'm going to just pull out Fritter's plate up and then show you some serving suggestions, I think they're called. All right, we're going to get some plates here to get started with. Okay. Remember how I talked about there are all different kinds of fritters. So this is a patty fritter. This is a spinach fritter that I made. Oh, I need to scoot you back around, don't I? Let's get you looking in the right direction. This is a spinach fritter that I made with the every veg recipe that Katie's going to send it out to you. So this is more of a patty fritter, and it's just enough of a very stiff dough, barely enough to bind everything in there. These are really dense with spinach, and I wanted to show you this one because these are some spinach leaves that we blanched and chopped and put in the freezer. I just brought them out, thawed them, squeezed them out, chopped them up, and added them to the dough. And now we can these on our plate. And they end up picking them up. And fritters are just great for making it a little stack, or you can tile them. And this is, again, a way to get veggies in different ways. You could put fritters under as a bed for a salad or as a side rather than crackers. Again, all that veggie density, not just nutritional density, but veggie density. Let's pile this up, and I'll put the final one on top. Let's use this one. You can put a little cheese in here if you want. Anytime I use cheese, I try to use a hard, well-aged cheese like a Parmesan, Pecorino, some of your like Greek Mazithra, something that's kind of hard or something that's crumbly. Feta would be fine. Anything that's really soft, medium soft, or softer is going to really melt out and possibly get in your pan, and that's going to gunk everything up. So with this one, I want to use, we have a lot of things, a lot of different sauces back here. You're going to get a couple of these. I have just a very basic marinara. You're going to get this recipe. So when you start seeing all these wonderful tomatoes come in, this is a lovely contrast to our spinach fritters. And you can make a big plate of this, or you could do it individually and just put a little bit on top. So a lovely marinara, or my grandmother used to make a lot of homemade tomato ketchup. That would be lovely on something like that. As for our kind of pancakey ones, and our director actually thought these might be pancakes this morning. This is a corn jalapeno fritter. I was going to say you're going to get a little bit of a spicy treat if you think these are pancakes. So I've got these here, and we're going to just plate those up. Oh yeah, we're doing great. Probably do a little tiling here. And this is, as you can see, I'm just gonna, you're not eating these, I'm gonna use my hands. We'll just put these around like this. And one of the things that we have here in the kitchen is, I do train a lot of college students. They are our workers. They're the employees that make everything run smoothly around here. So our students come in and they help me to preserve a lot of things. So this corn is from Rockcastle County, and we cut it and froze it last year. So they learned about that process. They also learned a lot of canning. So if you like canning, this might be something you want to incorporate too. We have some pepper jelly right here. And that little sweet, tangy heat will be lovely with the corn and the jalapeno. It sort of echoes it, but also adds a little bit of brightness. So this one, I'm just gonna put a little dab on each one, not belabor it too much. You could use, again, one of these tomatoey sauces as well. You know, anything that will be a counterpoint to all this sweetness of the corn. These things out. And lastly, those okra fritters I was talking about. These are great for parties, and you could do them with okra, which is sometimes people have difficulty figuring out what to do. I have a lot of great okra recipes because I love okra actually, but most people are introduced to it as fried, breaded and fried. This is a little bit different. This is breaded and fried, but it is a batter, and these are the deep fried ones. So we do try to drain them pretty well. I love these little sort of roundish, misshapen, kind of hush puppy dumpling kind of fritters. And what I would do for this for a large crowd is pile them up on a platter. Try not to drop them. And then to serve with this, it's a very traditional sauce called remoulade. It's kind of like a Cajun or Creole tartar sauce. I think it's the best way. So then I just platter those up and put that on the side so people could serve themselves. And then let's bring out the ones that we did today. I'm going to do those all in one plate. To save some room. And you can see you get all different kinds of colors and textures. I actually, these sort of, again, these are more like pancakey fritters. These are great for adding on as a side or doing an appetizer. And we'll do the root veg over here. And please note that if you do use the red beet, these could still bleed all over everything. Just use the same care in doing your fritters as you would your actual beets. Okay, and I have a couple of sauces. So for the zucchini, actually I will use two things. For the, I'm trying to incorporate a lot of different stuff. So I've got this sauce. It's a tahini sauce, very simple. You just kind of toast some sesame seeds and then throw in some lemon juice and yogurt and tahini and herbs. And I'm going to this is really thin, so I'm going to drizzle that over the root veg. And then to add to that, I have some green tomato chutney that we made from tomatoes right here from UK's own research farm. So again, this is something I try to do to preserve some of our bounty here on campus. We're going to talk about that next time. I'm sure this is a great segue into the next class because we're going to talk about preserving just a little bit. And then on the zucchini fritters, I have both an earthed yogurt sauce. This is based on a recipe by Yotama Ottolenghi. He has the Simple and the Ottolenghi cookbooks and also a whole host of restaurants across London. But he has a lot of veggie-based recipes that I turn to frequently. And this is a wonderful, so if you're getting lots of herbs, this is a wonderful way to use those up. So that is a kind of drizzle sauce on there. And then of course, we're going to use this lovely fresh tomato relish. That's the final either sauce or garnish or however you want to look at that. So look at this. This is a way to use, I mean, you could almost use up your whole box this way. You may not want to eat all fritters, but there's so many different ways you can incorporate what you're getting either at the farmer's market or in your CSA share when you pick it up. So are there any questions?
Tanya, thank you so much. Everyone in the chat is talking about how delicious all of the fritters look. And we have about 5 minutes or so we can pick Tanya's brain about other ideas. And I apologize about the links not working in the chat, but we'll send a PDF with all of the recipes that she showed off, the root veg, the summer squash, the any veg fritter, as well as the herb yogurt sauce and the marinara sauce. But we had a question in one of the recipes that did call for some baking soda, and we were wondering if that was required or if we could omit it, or just wanted to get your thoughts there.
You can, a lot of these don't require it. Now it's really important for this kind of fritter, the okra fritter that you're going to deep fry, because you want the leavening to puff those up, because that's what helps surrounds the veggie, and you need the leavener so that you get that process inside, so you get a little bit of a spring on the dough. And like I said, there's a bit more dough to vegetable in this kind of fritter. But now for these others, you don't really need, like these patties, they don't lift, they don't spring. We're not looking for any kind of puff on those. So we don't have, and now for the pancake type, there is a little bit of leavener in there. But that is when you're looking for that really soft spreadable cake, like a corn cake that we have.
Okay, and there was another question that came through, kind of speaking to corn, about possibly using some cornmeal in the fritter. Would that give it some kind of crunchy texture, or is it possible you could like use some of that with the flour?
Yes, that's especially good with the pancake type and the deep fried, I guess I should say, fritter. This actually, the okra fritters do actually have just a wee bit of cornmeal in there, and it does provide a little bit more crunch when they're first fried, and also some of that, corn flavor that we all love. And I think that would be a great addition to it, like sub a little bit, like a tablespoon or two. It's really small amounts of flour, but yeah, sub like a tablespoon or two of cornmeal would give these a little bit more crunch as well.
Yeah, like a couple tablespoons. That sounds great. And then somebody was wondering, could it be air fried or baked, the fritters, or like, is there other options for fritters?
Well, yes, I think for the patty type, which is the every veg fritter recipe, because you're forming those with your hands, kind of like any kind of croquette or like a potato cake if you used to make those. If you had that kind of upbringing where you have leftover mashed potatoes and you make potato cakes. So you're forming those with your hands, and then you might want to dredge them a little bit. I'm not sure with an air fryer. I haven't played around with something like this in there, but I think that kind could be done. Now, as you can see, these are all pretty thin batters on the other kinds of fritters, and I don't know how if that would work in an air fryer, because they're so liquid. They don't have like the viscosity to hold it.
But possibly that any veg fritter could work, because it's
any veg fritter that you're patting, that's hard, that's firm enough you can pat together. That
okay. And I'm gonna rapid fire. We have several more questions coming through the chat, so I'm gonna try. So we had a question on, somebody had a supply of peas that were shelled, sugar snap peas. Any thoughts on using those in fritters or processing them for freezing? Just a quick kind of veg tip there.
Yes, and peas are one of my favorites. It's like when the growing season starts, that's what I look forward to. So I'm glad you asked that. For preserving, I would do a quick blanch in boiling water, maybe 30 seconds, and then shocking in an ice bath. And then you can drain that really well, throw them in the bags, throw them in your freezer. So that's a preservation method, and it's pretty low key. As far as using them in this, for sugar snap peas or peas where you want to keep the pod, you could probably chop them up into the any veg, or I would do a mixture maybe, because that would be really super sweet. So maybe if you have some alliums like garlic or onion or something with a little bitterness, like a bitter green, then or some celery, pair it with something that'll kind of counteract that sweetness. It's going to be really starchy too, so you may want to pair it with another veg just to kind of cut back on that. But chop those up. For English peas, you can actually make a patty out of the peas with a little bit of egg. There's so much starch in there that they could form their own dough, and you wouldn't even have to probably add any flour to that. So that could be almost like the base for your dough.
No, that sounds great. And then there were several questions about kind of different variations for the root veg fritter. Yes. Shana wanted to know if we possibly including parsnips in the root veg fritter, carrots, sweet potatoes, anything else, like kind of some other ideas for the root veg fritter. Somebody had a question about maybe pumpkin being added, and then if the veggies needed to be if they could be hand grated versus like using a food processor. So those were like our final questions as we wrap up.
Yes, so for the root veg fritter, yes, definitely you could use some parsnips, you could use carrots, rutabaga. I think some celery root would be awesome in it, grated up, because that again, you have that tiny bit of bitterness on the end, and that would counterbalance all of these sweet veg. And of course, any color beet, turnips, radishes. I know people are like, oh, cooked radishes, but they're really tasty once they're cooked. And again, just squeeze out all that excess moisture. Pumpkin, it would depend on the variety. Like if you have an Asian variety that's really dry, I think would work okay. You'd have to par cook it and almost, par cook it to where it could still be grated, or almost mash it. And again, that's so much starch that you may not need very much flour, if at all. Maybe just a little dusting on the outside. If you have a really wet pumpkin, like I've tried to do things with cooked sweet potatoes and fall pumpkins, and they just contain so much water that it's almost impossible to get it all out. So My advice would be to experiment and see if you can squeeze out enough moisture to get everything to bind together. That is your biggest issue with a fritter, is that it's got to bind enough that you can put it in the hot oil and it's not just good, especially for a deep fried fritter. You may want to look more toward like a drop beignet or a hush puppy kind of recipe, because it'll need a little bit of binder, and you'll need it to prevent all that water from making your oil spatter a lot too.
Yeah. So possible to do pumpkin and other things, but a little bit different technique that you might have to use, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. We had such great questions coming in through the chat. Definitely, if you can give us a little reaction or a high five for Chef Tanya, these are like mouth watering. I hope you guys got to have some lunch while you were watching. We'll send all the recipes. If you can, we have a survey that we dropped into the chat. We're going to give away a free cookbook. We'll raffle that off to anyone that fills out our kind of short survey. We love your feedback on what you liked about this. And we also, Chef Tanya alluded to it, but we have one other virtual cooking demo coming up in August called Garnish That Dish. And Chef Tanya, what will we be talking about then?
Well, sometimes when you are looking at your box, especially as you get toward the end of the season, you're like, oh my gosh, what do I do with all this? I can barely use it up before I get my next share. So we're going to look at a few different ways to use your veggies. Rather than just like putting them into your main entree or a meal, we're going to look at a little bit of preservation. So if you're interested in that, you might want to join us for this. We're going to look at quick pickling. We're going to look at sauces, making sauces directly from what's in your box. And we're going to look at ways to use veggies as your garnish. So that way you don't have to like just put a little piece of parsley on everything. We're going to show you different ways to incorporate your actual veg into your garnishes.
Yeah, that sounds great. I'm so excited for it. We have it on our website, so check it out. You can register for that. It'll be the same time, Thursday at noon to noon 45. But thank you again so much. We appreciate it. We're so glad. And thank you all for joining us. We really appreciate it.